Okay, we're going to reconvene our school board meeting for April 22nd for Mount Diablo Unified School District. And our next agenda item is Mount Diablo Unified School District budget presentation. I'll turn it over to Dr. Meyer.
Yes, I'd like to ask if Rose Ramos could please come up, and I'll go ahead and start. We wanted to give the board some information on where we are with the budget and to share some information on the topic of the evening negotiations. And so I'm going to just share some information. This is what you've seen in previous reports, but it speaks to the belief that the budget is the expression of our values and what we, to the extent that we can, what we feel is important. And going through a couple of things, and I may ask Rose for any specifics at some point, but this is a sharing of some of the information that has been requested so we could publicly have a conversation if necessary regarding the cost of proposed class size reductions. And Rose, any specifics on this?
No. Is this on? Yep. Good evening. I believe it pretty much speaks for itself. This is the cost is right on top, the 12.7 million, I'm just rounding here, to achieve the proposed reductions over to the right. The first column that says current all is what we currently have in our agreement, and that's what, those are the maximum class sizes.
And so then the proposed, you can see, which is what we currently have, an average of 24:1, K3. And then you can see where there are some differences. There has been a proposal that has a differentiated support for you can look here, 4-5, 33:1. And then Title I classes 30:1 from 34. And you can see as it goes further, you can see kind of the difference in looking at that supplemental support and putting that into class size. And this 12.7 million, this is for 1 year?
Correct. It is 1 year. Yep.
Okay. Any questions on this?
Just maybe offer a little clarification as well. So the current represents what the current contract, right, calls for. So we have a contract with our teachers union, and by contract, that's the maximum that a class can be, class size, right?
That is correct. So what we actually have is quite different than that.
Right. I think that's important.
Yes.
Yes. Thank you
showed
for
me the
clarifying.
slide.
Yes,
that actually
much
showed
lower.
Actuals. And
This
then
is the maximum.
Is what the Medea is proposing or requesting as part of the negotiation process, right? Those two columns.
That is correct.
Okay.
Through the chair, can I ask
And
a
if that were to the cost of what they're asking for, maybe is a different way to say it, would be the 12.7 million.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
That's helpful, thank you.
And I just want to clarify to make sure I've got this right. When they come to us and they ask for 24 hard, that would mean that if the first grade classes in the school down the street from me all had 24 kids in them, and my neighbor moves in and has a first grader and wants to go put the kid in the class, it's like, too bad, find another school. Is that what the 24 hard means? Okay.
Yes. Yes, it does.
The other possibility would be to reconfigure the school
And make combination.
to make combination classes, yes.
And it also applies to things like if there's a particular student and teacher who aren't a good fit in that scenario where they're all at 24:1, that student would not be able to switch into another class without a student from there coming over. So even having 25 and 23 would not be possible in that scenario.
And that's something that we do often as a strategy when there is not a good match. So the next slide, we wanted to share some of the information. So there was So you had some financial information on the cost of any particular proposed increase in wages. And so this particular slide has the cost of 1%, 2%, 3%, and 4% salary increase. So you can see what the funding would be for that. And in this slide, I had asked that our fiscal department put the cost for all of our bargaining units as just for reference, so you can see that. And is there anything, Rose, that you see?
Yeah, the only other thing I'd point out is this is all funds, not just general fund, because we do have a couple of other funds, and just so you know, we didn't isolate those or single them out because they're not that large in the numbers. And just to give you an example, 1% for the other combined funds is 85,000, 2% is 170, 3% is 255. And 4% is 341,000. So it's not that much of a part of the total that's listed there. And that was it. And of course, this is ongoing per year. And the other funds are the cafeteria and adult ed funds.
So you're saying that other funds could contribute to that cost. That is not just general fund.
That's correct. They are part of that total yellow bottom.
Thank you. So you can see here, ongoing per year. Where we have, are there any questions or comments regarding that? That has been something that has been a request that we wanted to answer.
And so the district's current proposal to Medea, if spread across all bargaining units at 2%, would cost the district in excess of $5.3 million.
Correct. And to clarify, it is currently, the current offer is 2% off schedule, so it's not ongoing, but it would still be that cost that you see right there, $5.3 million.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, so this particular slide speaks to resources as of the 18-19 second interim. And Rose, if you wouldn't mind maybe explaining a little more about this.
So the numbers are the same numbers you saw at second interim. I'm not going to go through those, but I thought it was important to point out what is it that we really do have available after we satisfy our financial obligations, including the 3%, and we highlighted that amount there. So that's first column. Let's go to 18-19. We go all the way down to the yellow highlight. You'll see that we have 5.8 that's not restricted, available to spend, you know, I guess if you would say it that way, on other items. However, the reason we have not said that this is available to spend is because we need that to get us through the future years. Because if you go over to your right and you see 1920, 2021, you'll see how much we have left after we meet our required reserve. And I know it looks a little odd that in the third year we have that available jumps up just a little bit from 64,000 to 303,000, and the reason for that is because in 1920 we are definitely anticipating implementing further budget reductions to try to minimize that deficit, because we know we're operating at a deficit, and our goal is ultimately to be at a no deficit. It makes it a little hard because the revenue is so low. But so that's what you're seeing there. But nonetheless, 303,000 for ongoing millions of dollars of salary increases is not sufficient. That would clearly put us in the negative, and that's what this slide shows.
And so, you know, we have had a lot of discussion about the line item in particular, books and supplies, because that has been really a place where all sorts of different funding sits and really waits as it's allocated out to different budgets. And we have in this forum and on our webpage and other places shown how so much of that is restricted. So that's something that I think we need to continue speaking about, because there's still, you know, when you look at it and you think, well, maybe we could do without books and supplies, we're required to spend it in a different way. So that's one thing that I think we need to continue to speak to, where I believe others who've made comments and suggestions have been correct is if we did want to look into the general fund and see what is currently there. And if, you know, so really the answer, if we're going to increase in any way, is to go to that and cut from there. If we are going to, you know, so we can't hit these restricted funds. We can look at any funds that we have that are unrestricted, but we could as a discussion point, look to, and it's not pleasant, but it is where the funding is, different places to see if we have other things that we would need to cut. And one of the cost-saving things, in addition to our budget restrictions that we have looked at and done, as you heard tonight, is to, going back to that first slide, is to look at what our maximum class sizes are, because so much being 90% people is in all of the people positions, not just in the classroom, outside the classroom, everywhere. So those are the considerations that we wanted to bring to the forefront and share. And this particular slide, I think, really does that. And you can see we've come up now without those cuts to nearly the same exact amount of our offer.
Question? So where it says spendable amount, the 5.8, are you saying that if we were to spend that we would then go into the negative in the
Correct.
following 2 years?
That's correct. That's correct. Because we're using that. That's part of our ending fund balance, and so that becomes the beginning fund balance for the next year. So yes, but I just wanted to differentiate that from. It gets a little confusing when you just have your ending fund balance just combined into one, and then the 3%. And so really, the question has been, how much is really left over of the unrestricted ending fund balance? And this is what's left over, and that's the only amount that you can use, or category that you can use to satisfy the 3%. We can't use the restricted ending fund balance for that. So I know it gets a little confusing, but that's the requirement. So we really don't, it really is not available to use unless we do go into a negative or qualified situation.
So from the previous slides, what you're saying is that the total amount that Medea is requesting is the 12 million for class size plus the 4% column, plus 10 million,
Right.
and that's not including the cost of nurses and librarians
That's correct.
that are also requested as
That's
well.
correct. So you would have to take those amounts that were proposed, those proposals, and subtract them each year, right? Because those are ongoing costs from each of these columns, and so in order to see what that impact would be, and it's pretty obvious that it would be very, very negative.
It would be in excess of $30 million.
And this is just, again, just to provide that information on what does it mean to be positive, what does it mean to be negative. We left off qualified here because that, that really it's the negative that we would get to very quickly. Negative says is if you can't meet your obligation, you believe you cannot in any of those years, you're automatically going to have a negative certification. So that's what would happen to us if we were to grant that, because we just don't have the millions of dollars to sustain an ongoing expense for the 3 years, because you have to be able to show that you can support it for 3 years, not just 1 year. And so the impact is that, and we've heard from our neighboring districts, and you've heard it's on the news all over the place, that we would lose control. The reductions would be made for us anyway, so meaning they would probably roll back or attempt to roll back any kind of compensation increase that we would try to give. The reductions would be made in reducing FTEs. They would come in and look at the budgets. We'd be restricted in terms of spending. We would lose total control over our budget and our ability to manage our district. And so it's not a pleasant situation for people who have been through that. I'm not, but in talking to others, it's not. It ultimately does hurt children, because the reductions are made often. It hits the classroom. So that's why we're trying to, be very thoughtful about this, and we know we have to reduce, and it's better for us to do that, collectively and systematically and thoughtfully, and trying to keep it away from the classroom as much as possible, where we do have some areas that we can reduce. And the other thing is being able to issue debt. We know that any debt that doesn't require voter approval, we would be prohibited if we were to we would have to take out a loan. That we would not be allowed to issue debt in that case, and so yeah, so it's there. And of course, all the impact on the district in general, low morale and etc.
I can share that as we've been working through with some of the budget restrictions and considerations, travel, spending, looking at carryover, looking at alignment of funding, we have anticipated that with this yellow number, that 5,800 as the ending because of some of the work that has been done this year. So that will be something that will continue in the out years. So those other two may go up as well, and we anticipate they would because they will then have the ending balance.
Yes.
That being said, though, it is something that you can't necessarily count on as we're making
That's
different
correct.
promises. And then lastly, as we mentioned in many different presentations, looking at the staffing thoughtfully, looking at the materials, what we can do, what we can create on our own, and really looking also at our facilities and our different facilities usage. Yes, there's a great school right up there. I see our Concord High students over here. And then also looking at the services, which we've talked about quite a bit, and the need for those services and balancing that. So we will continue to look at different budgets that are not general fund as well for some of the services that have been discussed. Certainly, different grants that we have, different categorical funding, budget streams, and really looking at how we can put those in the most, very difficult conversation, but really to prioritize so we can have them in the place where they're most impacting students. And that concludes our negotiation or budget update.
Thank you both very much. It's very helpful. Okay. We now go on to recognitions and resolutions. We have 10.1, resolution number 18/19-52, California Day of the Teacher, May 8th, 2019.
Madam President, I move that the board adopt the resolution 18/19-52 in acknowledgement of California Day of the Teacher, May 8th, 2019.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a first and a second. If there's no more discussion, we'll go to the vote. And that passes 5-0-0-0. Thank you. 10.2, resolution number 18/19-53, classified school employees week.
I'd like to make a motion to approve to adopt resolution 18/19-53 for classified school employees week.
Second?
Okay, we have a first and a second. If there's no further discussion, we'll go to the vote. And that passes 5-0-0-0. Thank you. 10.3, resolution number 18/19-54, recognition of National Day of Silence, April 12th, 2019.
Madam President, I move that the board approve resolution 18/19-54, recognition of the National Day of Silence, which was on April 12th, 2019.
Second.
We have a first and a second. And if there's no other comments or discussion, we'll go to the vote. And that passes 5-0-0-0. Thank you. 10.4, resolution number 18/19-55, call to climate change. And
Aging Hippie would like to approve resolution 18/19-55. Climate change action.
On Earth Day.
Always
Okay,
a
so
good
do you
idea.
have some cards on this, or do you want to speak? Would you like to speak first before we vote? In case you want to
Yes, please.
vote it also. Okay, so we have Rebecca Carcoma?
Good evening, Board President Durkee, esteemed board members, and Superintendent Meyer. My name is Rebecca Carcamo, and I'm a 4th grade teacher at Mount Diablo Elementary School. I'm also a parent of 2 MDUSD students. On behalf of my fellow concerned teachers, we're delighted that you've been receptive to the idea of a climate change resolution. Our MDUSD school sites have a variety of green programs, garden programs, waste reduction programs, and environmental clubs, to name a few. Our students are learning to respect and care for our planet. In addition to teaching and empowering children, as educators, we are also mandated reporters. Wearing that hat, a climate resolution for our district will send a clear message to politicians that they need to protect the health and safety of our youth. Again, on behalf of my fellow concerned teachers, we're proud that our district is considering taking an active role to lessen the climate burden for our students. Thank you.
Thank you. Sophia? Pull that mic way down to you. There you go. Perfect.
Hello, hello, members of the board, President of the board Durkee, and Superintendent Meyer. I'm Sophia Carcamo, a current 7th grader at Diablo View Middle School. In school, we have discussed many of the effects of global warming. For example, we have learned how the distribution of water will be altered as rising temperatures melt the polar ice caps. We have also learned how ecosystems will suffer as they cannot adapt to changing temperatures quickly enough. Additionally, we have studied climate change, how climate change causes extreme weather events and natural disasters, leaving communities in peril. I know that scientists and others are working to combat climate change. Nonetheless, much of the burden of global warming resides on the shoulders of my generation. Taking on global warming will be a lot for us to do on our own. I appreciate that Mount Diablo Unified School District is willing to support us by considering a climate resolution. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Devin Jackson?
Dear esteemed members of the board, President of the board, Madam Durkee, and Superintendent Meyer. My name is Devin Jackson, and I am a 6th grade STEAM teacher and environmental sustainability coordinator at Foothill Middle School in Walnut Creek. I am currently in my 6th year of teaching at Foothill Middle, and my 6th year of teaching a month-long unit on climate change, global warming, and global sea level rise. I am also a National Geographic certified teacher on global climate change, and I've worked with the University of California at Berkeley Museum of Paleontology Department on a curriculum called Understanding Global Change. I claim that our youth, as you saw, are a large group of scientific, eco-literate thinkers who should advocate for learning, understanding, and applying the concepts with the intent of reducing and mitigating one of our Earth's greatest environmental challenges. The charge of our district's teachers, faculty members, administrators, local, state, and national school board members, and local, state, and national politicians is to lead by example. Our nation's youth are part of a particularly vulnerable group. The amount of greenhouse gases currently being emitted into the atmosphere will continue to accumulate over the coming decades and will have a profound impact on their lives as well as the lives of future generations. The global impact, urgency, and magnitude of the challenge of addressing global climate change calls for leadership in all sectors of society, all institutions, and all elected leaders. I am proud. I am Medea proud. I am board proud. I am everything proud to be part of Mount Diablo Unified School District. And I'm proud that Mount Diablo Unified School District has already accomplished to implement district sustainability initiatives, including Foothill Middle School's 2018 Bronze Level Green Ribbon School Award. Please continue to address these sustainability initiatives and more by agreeing to sign resolution number 1819-55, the call to climate change action. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Auerbach.
Thank you so much for being willing to take a look at the effect of climate change on our children. I am newly married and contemplating the question of whether to have children here in Concord, as I'm deeply afraid of what kind of planet I would be bringing them into. And I've recently, partly for that reason, become a volunteer with Schools for Climate Action, which is a new organization that's been communicating with school districts. And just in the past slightly over a year, 42 school districts have passed resolutions like this one, as well as other educational organizations, PTAs, teachers unions, student councils. And you would be the first Contra Costa school district to take action on this. And I'd love to see you set that example. I would love to see you spread the word among the other educational networks where you know people. And again, thank you so much for looking at this.
Thank you.
I just want to say thank you especially to Sophia and to the students in our Mount Diablo schools who are not only learning about this from our amazing teachers, but are also taking action every day. It's just incredible. I have a 5th grade daughter who actually, her Girl Scout troop did a fundraising bronze award for water bottle fillers and filters at 2 of the schools in the school district. And I know so many students are really taking action at all ages, and I think that's so fantastic.
Excellent citizen scientists.
Was there one more speaker?
Kenji Yamada.
Thank you, board members. I want to add thanks to you for considering this item. And I'm married to Rebecca Auerbach, who spoke earlier, and like she said, we're thinking about bringing kids into this world, and what world will it be? And I really thank you as one of the important institutions charged with the future of children in this area for taking this seriously and treating it as a generational justice and human rights issue, as your proposed resolution rightly calls it. And I also want to reiterate the thanks to our teachers who are educating kids about climate change, what it means for our future, and for those students who are not planning to take care of this issue in the future, but are already standing up and doing it now, like Sophia Carcamo just now.
Great, thank you. So I want to thank Kenji and the teachers for bringing this, putting this on our radar. So we probably wouldn't have seen it without you doing that, so I appreciate that. And I don't know if you guys are looking for input, but I say go for it. You make great parents.
And also thanks to the staff who put this together. I assume there were some specifics written in here that required some staff time at a time that things are really busy right now. So, but it's important, I think, for.
Good, yeah, all good. Okay, thank you. Okay, we move on to. Oh, yeah, we have to do a vote on it, sorry. See, I was already done.
I seconded it, I believe.
We have a first and a second.
I think everyone
Did you guys get that? Okay.
Yes.
So we have a first and a second, and we're ready to vote. And that passes 5-0-0-0. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I get it back on the screen?
Oh, whoops.
Or not, I can't go back to it. Can't go back. No, I got it.
Thank you.
It'll be in the minutes.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, now we'll move on to board member reports, and we'll start with Ms. Cowan this time.
All right. A lot going on. I'm going to start with my usual education funding topic, as that's a big one these days. First of all, I just want to say thank you to our board president, Joanne Durkee, for coordinating the group of us to meet together with Assemblymember Grayson back on March 28th, along with Superintendent Meyer, Medea President Anita Johnson, and CSBA organizer Gabe Weiss. And I'm sure all 5 of us would have been there had we not had the Brown Act holding us back. But it was really valuable, I think, for all of us to be organizing together at this time when, there's so much focus on what's happening at individual school district levels when really the funding issue is at the state levels. So each of us shared examples of some successes in our schools as well as serious challenges that we face. And I was heartened to hear Assemblymember Grayson shared his support for AB 39 that would significantly improve our state education funding, as well as his passion for special education and career tech options. So then that night, he held a town hall where there was a great crowd with lots of cheering, and Assemblymember Bauer Cahan, Grayson, and Senator Glazer all publicly stated their support for full and fair education funding through AB 39. And I think one of the things that made a big difference was the number of people who were there and who had contacted them already about education funding. So they asked how many people in the audience were parents, teachers, or students. And as well as they had received many emails and visits from people about education funding. And so all of our local legislators are in support. So keep sharing at the www.fullandfairfunding.org. I also wanted to mention in terms of advisory committees, for those of you who don't know, or the Measure J Citizens Bond Oversight Committee applications are live on the website. We're seeking broad representation from all areas of the district. So please consider applying, parents, business members, even students. I wanted to thank Rose Ramos for her presentations that she's been giving here at these board meetings, as well as at the Budget Advisory Committee meeting and others, to keep us all up to speed on what the actual funding realities are. And then in terms of community events, I enjoyed attending the NAACP annual membership and scholarship banquet on April 6th, and wanted to give a shout out to Mr. Willie Mims, Velma Wilson, and our local NAACP East County leaders who volunteered countless hours for our communities. On April 12th, I attended the PTA Advocacy Day for Education in San Ramon, and the focus was mental health, which I think is such an important topic, especially right now in all of our schools. And they had some really great resources there that they shared, a few key websites. They gave a presentation by the San Ramon Valley District's Mental Wellness Task Force. They actually had a district-wide task force that focused on collecting the data and then creating a plan for mental wellness in the district. A few of the websites that they talked about was www.suicideispreventable.org, sanfordharmony.org, it's a free program that they're implementing there, and of course sandyhookpromise.org. They also shared hotlines to keep at hand, so if you don't have these in your phone, the National Suicide Prevention is 1-800-273-TALK. And then the Trevor Lifeline for LGBTQ is 866-488-7386. And they also had the county resource guide links as well. Yes. And then lastly, Trustee Deborah Mason and I attended the IHTA Community Sponsors presentation at John Muir last week, and Ms. Mason opened the event with rousing, enthusiastic words that encouraged the students and really opened the event, I think, in a really special way for our students. And she was there along with Concord Mayor Carlin Obringer, County Superintendent Lynn Mackey, and Visit Concord's Elaine Schroff. The Mount Diablo High seniors presented their professional business plans along with costs and even video commercials that they had made for their upcoming Hospitality Fest plans. And then they interacted with local business leaders. So it was a great example of teachers and staff that are really connecting the dots to build the relationships between school, career, and community. Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Mayo?
Yes, thank you. I would like to share that on April 15th, I attended the Community Action Committee, that's our special ed committee, legislation committee meeting, where we discussed various bills in advance of the May 1st Special Education Lobby Day. It's probably called SELBA, but we know special education, most people recognize that. On April 18th, Ms. Mason and I attended the Oak Grove Middle School PK parent graduation. PK stands for Parent Institute for Quality Education, and the goal of this nonprofit is to help parents understand the public school system and create a college-going culture with parents and students. 55 parents were celebrated for completing the 8-week course, and with 15 of them having perfect attendance. And the evenings are long, especially when you have little ones, and childcare was provided, so I want to applaud these parents for completing that work. And the audience and the parents and the children were very proud. Of course, the children got to see their parents receive the certificate, which was very heartwarming. The associate director from PK was there, as well as Principal Gascock, and Concord City Council member Eddie Bierson told several humorous stories about his children and their involvement at Oak Grove Middle School, and how he could have, I think he was implying, how he could have benefited from these classes that would have helped him parent his children. I want to remind you on April 30th that the CSBA legislation presentation will be done by Dennis Myers and also by Sarah Butler. They will provide information for members in Contra Costa County. This begins at DBC at 5:15. And then on May 4th, we have the CSBA PAC reception from 5 to 7 at Zio Freitas. So I hope to see you there. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Mason? Once I returned from my 12 days on the road, I got right back into things. I had a wellness meeting on the Wednesday after I returned, and shortly after that, I was approached by students at Mount Diablo High School that are wanting to improve the quality of their lunches. So I told them, we're working on it. It's going to take us a while, but we're working on it. And then on the 18th, I tried for the trifecta. I went to the DLAC meeting. I made it to the PK meeting, but by the time I got to Horizons for their open house, they were wrapping up, but I made an effort. And I went to the event with Miss Khan, and then I went to Meadow Home Saturday. They had a fundraiser car show, so I thought I was just going to watch, but I ended up having to judge the cars, which although I felt qualified after Route 66, I knew what to look for in classic cars. Then I just like to say that I'm glad one of the nurses is still here. I keep getting calls from Los Medanos Community Healthcare District, which apparently has an eyeglasses grant with us, and they're upset that we're not using it. So we need to find out who we need to connect to get those free glasses to kids. And then I guess the last thing I would say to many of the students that spoke tonight, that unfortunately the school district doesn't get to make teacher assignments. That's not in our purview. That's not our lane. That's something that's done within schools or through Medea. So, we hear you, we know you love your teachers, we know you'll miss some of them, but unfortunately we're not the ones that can fix that for you. But thank you for coming and sharing your concerns.
Mr. Lawrence?
So I would echo Mrs. Mason on that. First I thought our students who spoke tonight were incredibly eloquent and incredibly courageous and articulate. And I would certainly be open to right now much of teacher assignments for layoffs in what's termed involuntary assignments is dictated by seniority, and that is part of the contract with Medea. And if Medea was open to looking at other ways to do that, then I certainly would be supportive of that, because when we lose great teachers simply because they're not don't have as much time, I don't know that benefits students. And so if they are open to that, then I certainly would be as well. I think that Ms. Ramos and Dr. Meyer have done a great job of illustrating some of the challenges we have from a budget standpoint. I don't think there's any member of our board who would not like to see increased compensation for all of our employees and certainly our teachers. But the reality is, when we're being asked to spend $30 million annually, when you tally up the proposals, that's not fiscally realistic, and it would bankrupt our district, and more programs would be cut, more teachers would be cut, and we would face a multitude of fiscal ramifications from that. So if, and just my perspective on negotiations, I'm frustrated as well that we've been going since the start of the school year. And so I think at this point, if there's not a quick finding of middle ground. It would be in all parties' interest to bring in a third party and help us mediate and figure out what can be done, because I don't think us continuing on a destructive path of having the negotiating teams be attacked is useful, and I certainly do not want a strike, but if we need to deal with the fiscal realities, I would rather that we do it sooner rather than later. Thank you.
Thank you. So I won't duplicate things other people have said, but I just appreciate your comments and also support the comments. So I did go to, I think I was the only board member, but we'll talk about this one, that got to the Horizons program, which I think it's my second time going, and it's really delightful. I think this was really, a lot of people said, only my second one, but a lot of people said it was one of the best ones they've ever had. And the opportunity for students to show their talent. My husband and I like to watch all those competitive singing shows, so we're something we have in common. So it was kind of fun, watching, and some really fabulous talent, and just to see that they have the courage to stand up there and they have found something that really means a lot to them. And I had a chance to talk a little bit to one student, and she's a sophomore, and it's like she's had a kind of a rough road, and she's just so happy, and her parents are so happy that she found this program. It's just a really good fit for her. So that was lovely to hear as well. I think a lot of my time and energy has been devoted to crying a lot every day about losing our superintendent. I'm getting over it. I'm getting through my grieving process, so I'm not going to let her forget it, though. But certainly, more seriously, focusing on this search, securing a search firm. And so I want to thank my co-board members for doing their homework over the weekend and reading the proposals, and that enabled us to get to a decision. And again, it's a tricky balance, I think, between doing a thorough job, but getting there sooner rather than later. So we're going to try and find that balance. We want it to be comprehensive with lots of opportunities for all stakeholder groups to give input, and maybe in a couple of different ways, for those that want to sit home and do it on their computer, and those that want to come to a meeting and talk. So we have confidence that this search firm will work with us on that goal. And like I said, I think we're all interested in doing this as quickly as possible, but again, getting the right person. So more to come on that. And finish the board reports. We'll go to the superintendent's report.
Thank you. Anticlimactic tonight, so let's lower your expectations just a little. Okay. So I wanted to share, we certainly are coming back from a wonderful weekend, and wanted to share some of the things that have been going on in our district. To start, as you have seen, truly we want to emphasize that what we do is a moral imperative, that public education and the success of our students is something that we take very seriously. And our goal is to make sure that every student has that success upon graduation, and certainly has the tools necessary for a productive life. And wanted to, oh my goodness, I got the font. Wanted to share, we continue with our academic targets to have support that we have brought together, that includes the California Collaborative for Educational Excellence, and the County Office of Ed is also working with us, and then we're working with West Ed. And so this last week we had a meeting, met with leaders from these organizations to really help plan a cohesive, collaborative pathway forward. And so we will be looking at taking our goals and working on the talents of these three groups and moving forward. So we are going to have workshops that will take place right after school ends with a combination of these three groups, and really look forward to continuing the work that we've done with all of them. So we now, as we've discussed, exited intervention for African American students in academics, and we continue to monitor the progress of our students as far as behavioral support. And so that seems to be a big place that we're looking at, suspensions and expulsions. And so these groups really want to look at the root cause, and then also look at some strategies that we can move forward with as a district that looks at how are we de-escalating, how are we working with students so behavior is not an impediment to academic success. So we are continuing this work and excited about it. Also wanted to share the budget information. I'm looking at this and I'm not as proud of my pictures here as usual. Yes, but did want to share that we have had negotiations updates within closed session, and I think that's been very important, and thank you to Lisa Murviotz and to Rose Ramos, who have presented information on that. I know that we are continuing to work with negotiations with the Teamsters, which is happening this week. We're working with CST negotiations as well, and the Medea table, and so really looking at CST. All of our tables currently are open, and so we're going to continue to share information and look at the budget information and share that out as much as we can. Also wanted to share that we had a principals meeting last week, and one of the important things that we did is we shared the new SAC school code, the SAC codes for the budget. And thank you to Samantha Espinosa and Nancy Juner, who shared the new, very cumbersome, my theory, deliberately so, but that's just me, cumbersome codes that we work with in California for the budgets. And you know, anytime you have a 15-digit letter number code, it is we want to make sure that it doesn't get in the way of making good decisions and understanding how our budgets work at all levels. So we are now getting into the 21st century and joining the rest of the state of California with these these codes. Previously, our district had kind of cut the codes and made them shorter so we could use the old system for a little bit longer, and so now we're moving forward with that. So thank you to them for that work. Wanted to also share, we heard Claire from Northgate talk about how she was so proud of the fact that they did their color run and egg hunt, and so here's a great picture of one of the students who I believe that is not the real color of his hair or his shirt. And so they go out and they take the chalk and then they run, and so it was a very exciting to see our high school students working with our elementary students again. And then also wanted to share, over the break, we had our choir, and I think it's choir and ladies first, because I see gentlemen there as well, but they went to Disneyland. So I put this up here because so often you approve these trips and you don't always get to see the joy that occurs when they go on the trips, and how impressive they are as they go out to represent our district on a state and national level. And speaking of state and national level, we've had 2 competitions for Odyssey of the Mind, Concord High School and Foothill Middle School. And this is an opportunity for students to solve complex problems and to really get together and work as a team and compete with other school districts that are doing this. And now I'm forgetting where they're going. I'm going to put someone on the spot, but I won't mention her name.
I know there's a GoFundMe account. I believe it's like $6,000.
Michigan?
I know, it's far away.
Yeah,
Michigan. Okay, Michigan. Okay, so yes, and thank you for pointing out that there's a GoFundMe account for this trip, but both teams are going to Michigan to compete, and so it's very exciting and we're very proud of them. And you can see they can kind of have a theme for their team and distinguish themselves from other teams, much like our robotics teams do. And then last, I wanted to show this picture of Principal Moss at Shore Acres. And she makes a habit of whenever new students come to her school, she welcomes them into her office, has a conversation with them, and gives them, some way to share where they're from and why they're proud to be Shore Acres Sharks. And this is a picture of them, and you can see they're very excited about being there with her. And then lastly, I think YV High School's soccer team doesn't get enough credit. They really sweep the championships every year. They're amazing. And we can see them here, and that is my report for this evening. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, we're now going to the consent agenda. Items listed under the consent agenda are considered routine and will be approved, adopted by a single motion. There'll be no separate discussion of these items. However, any item may be removed from the consent agenda upon the request of any member of the board and acted upon separately. Do you have any requests to remove any items?
Madam President, I'd like to pull 13.5 and 13.17.
Okay, do we have a motion for the rest?
Madam President, I would move the board approve the consent agenda as presented with the exception of 13.5 and 13.7 to be considered separately. 13.17, yes.
Second.
Okay, we have a first and a second. If there's no further discussion, we'll go to the vote. And that passes 5-0-0-0. Thank you. Okay, so now we have the two items that were pulled, and we'll start 14.1, which was 13.5, item number 5, management service contract between Mount Deb Unified School District and Sixth Dimension LLC for construction management. Ms. Mayo?
Yes, first I wanted to point out that it took me opening the attachment to determine that this management contract was for summer roofing and hardscape projects only, and maybe that's a small detail on my part, but I was trying to understand the breadth of the work that would be covered by the management firm, and I was wondering, the contract amount is for $246,000. I was wondering, Dr. Meyer, what the total amount or value of the contracts they will be overseeing this summer is.
I'm going to ask my experts in the, who could perhaps come up to answer, please. Thank you. The total amount of
The contracts.
that they will be
I
overseeing.
think there's 4 or 5 roofing.
There are, it's 12 million altogether.
$12 million.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And then in looking at the final page, that was, so it's page, I believe it's page 10 of the PDF, there's the criminal background check page, and when I'm looking at the page, it does not, there is no check mark for condition 1, 2A, or 2B, which is the status of the fingerprinting requirement. So I'm just curious what that will be.
And I'm going to take a shot at it, and I'm going to hand it to you that this will be a time when school is closed. If I'm wrong, please correct me.
This is for summer construction. However, the firm will be required to have DOJ certified of the 2 employees that they'll be providing for us. However, since we don't have a signed contract yet, we'll be receiving the signed documents assuming you award, and then they'll go to the superintendent for signature.
Thank you, and thank you for reminding us all that there's only 2 individuals under contract for this, but Ms. Mason and I look at those.
I learned I asked one other time, and if it wasn't a signed contract, that wasn't checked yet.
And I like that answer better than mine.
You know, Mr. Ferrante has reminded us that we benefited greatly when we were able to do this work in-house. I understand the challenges for us to do it in-house and that we need many other projects that need to be done by our M&O department. So with that, I would move that we approve item 14.1, the management service contract with Sixth Dimension LLC for construction management.
Second.
Second. If there's no more discussion, we'll go to the vote.
Thank you for your comments.
And that passes 5-0-0-0. Thank you. So now we go to what's now 14.2, formerly item number 17, award of proposal of fixed asset inventory audit and reporting to Associated Valuation Services Incorporated.
So my questions around this, I recognize fully that we need to have the inventory done of our assets for the district. I just wanted some confirmation that the expenditure for this project is allowed under the bond language for Measure A. Because for those, I was part of Measure A in 1989 and it failed the first time in 1988, so I have a little bit of investment in assuring to our taxpayers that we're continuing to expend the monies according to the bond language.
So, in talking to our auditors and looking at the bond language, it was assumed that because this Measure A did pay for the equipment, that it was appropriate to use the same funding source to conduct an audit of the inventory in order to safeguard those assets. So that was the connection that was made there.
I guess I don't recall approving the purchase of electronic devices with Measure A funds, but perhaps we have recently. Originally, it was for multi-use rooms and grease traps and many other mundane items.
And that is correct. It doesn't specifically say electronic devices, but the equipment and furniture, the way it was stated is that anything that had a useful life of 5 years or more, and so that fell into that category.
Okay. That satisfies my concern. It was intentionally written so that it would hopefully meet the needs of the district in the future, and that explanation does meet that standard. So with that, I would move that we approve item 14.2, award of proposal of fixed asset inventory audit and reporting to Associated Valuation Services Incorporated.
I'll second that. Okay, we have a first and a second. If there's no other comments or discussion, we'll go to the vote.
Measure A keeps on giving.
And that passes 5-0-0-0. Thank you very much. Okay. So we are now at communications, district organizations, at regular board meetings. A single spokesperson of each recognized district organization may make a brief presentation. Following the consent agenda, items are limited to those which are informational, but I don't think we have any cards. And no. Oh, is that what your card was for? Yeah. Okay, come on down. Yeah.
Thank you, Denise Lambert, and I am representing the Community Advisory Committee for Special Education. And just briefly, I wanted to thank Linda Mayo for coming to our Legislative Sharing Day meeting, which we will be going to Sacramento on May 1st and knocking on doors and seeing what we can get done there. The executive board of CAC had prepared a statement regarding the what was on the Medea flyer and their concerns. I have recently just spoke to Anita Johnson, and we're going to meet up and talk a little bit about this. But these were some of the concerns, so I'm just going to kind of go over it since this is what I was sent up to do. Okay, so one of our major concerns with the Medea request to limit with an IEP, students with an IEP to only 2 per class is that under IDEA, the Individuals with Disability Education Act, a student's IEP placement should be first and foremost to be based on what is the appropriate and best environment for that student. The district/or school is then obligated to, by law, provided by FAPE, free and appropriate education in the least restrictive environment. According to Rights Law, a legal resource dedicated to special education law, least restrictive environment means that to the maximum extent appropriate, school districts must educate students with disability in the regular classroom with appropriate aids and support, along with their non-disabled peers in the school that they would attend if not disabled, unless the student's individual education program, IEP, requires some other arrangements. And that's in quotes because we do try to use person first language here. That this was quoted by Rights Law, so they never changed it. If a student with a disability can be educated satisfactorily with appropriate aids and supports in the regular classroom, in the school the student should attend the least restrictive placement. That would be the least restrictive placement for that student. The criteria by law should be the primary consideration for determining placement, not an external quota. An imposed quota of 2 students per class is yet another hurdle the district will have to jump in order to provide full inclusion services, and may result in yet another limiting factor in our students' abilities to be educated in the least restrictive environment. While we certainly acknowledge, recognize, and truly appreciate the additional work our teachers take on to support the students, particularly related to the IEP preparation, tracking, and implementation, we are unable to support this quota because while smaller class size and staff-student ratios are desirable, they may simply not be realistic given the current level of state funding. And our fear is that students' inclusion opportunities may be unfairly limited by arbitrary external factors as a result. We also have concerns about the additional pay for teachers with students with IEPs, because you could probably go into any classroom and a student will have an IEP. And the students' needs are all different, so it's just not equitable. So I don't know how that's going to be figured out, but we did want to address that and tell you what we're looking at, and we're keeping a close eye on the negotiations and what can be offered. And I'm thankful that Anita Johnson came up and is willing. We're going to talk a little bit about maybe what could be done and what's appropriate.
I wanted to say thank you for flagging this issue. I think it would be illegal, immoral, and discriminatory to have a quota such as this, and I would never support this in a contract, and I greatly appreciate you and your organization bringing it forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to move on to our business action items, and the first one is 17.1, board communication budget. So this is somewhat related to our public comment time. We've talked about the fact that we are struggling with decisions and priorities, and this is not unique to Mount Auburn Unified by any means. It's probably across the nation, across the state for sure. And it comes down to how public schools in California just aren't funded at the levels they should be. One data piece is that we are 41st in the nation on what was spent per pupil. And for a state like California, that's like incomprehensible and is certainly not acceptable. And it has a lot to do with the way the funding structure happens at the state level. And so we all know that well, and we, as Ms. Cowan talked about, you know, making efforts to talk to legislators to help them understand that. One thing about Assemblymember Grayson, he was very open to learning more about education funding. He's always said this kind of admittedly from the beginning, that it's kind of not his area of you know, strength, but he definitely in this meeting seemed very interested in understanding it better. And so when we left, the understanding was that someone from California School Board Association was going to meet with him in his office in Sacramento and sit down and explain where this 41st out of you know, in the nation comes from. So he has a good working knowledge of that. So that was a good step forward. But it's we're basically what we're saying, we're flat funded, and it's not going to get better. You know, when we look ahead, one of the things about the governor's budget is in his May revise will come out obviously in May, and we've all heard the possibility that the COLA that was in the January budget might actually go down, and it's not enough to begin with. So there's that concern. We have to wait and see what happens, but. Because we're technically fully funded, so that means we've hit this arbitrary ceiling. I mean, it's in code how we get to that ceiling, or how that ceiling gets established. And so then it's like the only thing you get is COLA, and when you're not even able to get that, it's concerning. So it's kind of like, you know, expenses keep going up, but funding stays flat or goes down. So it's a structural problem, and something needs to change. So in that interest, draft came up with a letter that if the board approves, it really from the school board out to our community, our parents, families, right? I think that's the idea. It's going to get emailed out electronically to encourage people. It's great to come and talk to us here. It's very sincere, and I want people to do that. I think it's important that people do that. But it's really important that people talk to their people that can actually change the structure of how public education is funded in California. So that's what this is an effort to do, is that, you know, if they start hearing from that many more people, or any more people in their districts, you know, that they represent, it's definitely got to have an impact. So for someone like Assemblymember Grayson, you know, he starts hearing, it's going to raise the level of importance to him. So anyway, that's the intent. We do want to make a change. There's one change that didn't get made, but Ms. Cowan suggested to me is what I've learned is that for emails for our representatives, that most of them don't have their own separate email. They want you to go to their website, and then there's a form that you fill out, you know, electronically. It's all done electronically. But we could put the link to that on the letter. So that might be one more addition to add to the letter. So,
and for those people that would use fax, their offices always receive fax, whether you are in their district or not. So I would recommend adding the fax number. Some of us don't have faxes, but for those that do, it's helpful.
Yeah, I hear this anytime I have the opportunity to be in Sacramento, talk to the legislators, and it seems silly in this day and age, but they keep saying the biggest impact is someone sits down and writes an old-fashioned letter and puts it in the mail. But you know, if that keeps someone from doing it, we want to definitely have other options. So.
Yeah, thank you. And I just want to say thank you, President Durkee, for drafting this and taking the time to represent our whole board with this message. I think it's just crucial. I think absolutely adding the websites would be great, because if we email it out and people are clicking and they want to click to take some quick action, it would be good to have the links on there. And I like how you have the link to fullandfairfunding.org as well. There's a petition on there people can click and sign as well. The one other idea I had that I don't think is in here, but that there was another action that this board took, I believe, last year, passing a resolution to this effect. So if you wanted to add a link to that,
yeah, we can
that's an idea.
Keep it to 2 pages.
But yeah, if it's too long, that's totally fine.
So we can add that as well, the link to the resolution. Yeah.
But I really like how you have the explanation in here of Prop 98, because the general public and the state legislators really don't understand. They think we're fully funded, right. And that was always meant to be a floor. Right. Prop 98 was to say, after you know, the cuts started in 2008. We went down like this, right? And we're just barely getting back up to where we were in 2008. That's not supposed to be a ceiling, right? That's supposed to be a floor, so, yes, thank you.
So I guess we're looking for action, we need a motion with those corrections, we understood those additions.
Madam President, I'd like to move that we approve this letter as presented with the corrections of adding the legislator websites and possibly fax numbers if accessible. And the link to our resolution.
Prior to seconding, I would just add to President Durkee, one, thank you, but two, I would leave it completely to you. I'll go ahead and project here that this might possibly pass on a 5-0 vote, and so I would leave it to you whether or not you would like to have it signed from all 5 board members or from yourself, and whichever you prefer, but I would certainly be happy to have my name on it as well. And that was the second.
Yeah, I was trying to expedite, but
Yes.
yeah, that's a good idea. Okay, so all signatures. Okay, all right, so we'll make all those changes, and we have a first and a second. There's no other edits. We'll go to the vote. And that passes 5-0-0-0. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, so now we're up to 17.2, Resolution 18/19-51, authorizing issuance and sale of general obligation bonds 2018, election Series A in an aggregate principal amount not to exceed $20 million and no cents. So this was on for information last time. I'm assuming we might have some further discussion. Do we want to make a motion for my presentation? Presenters?
Good evening again. You may recall 2 weeks ago I made a presentation when this item was up before you as an information item. There was a question at the time as to whether the structure as it was appropriate. And so this presentation that's in front of you is really a reworking of the previous. There are copies, and is there a clicker? And since this is an action item on a resolution, I've asked Chick Adams, who's legal counsel of the district, to be here as well in case there are any questions on the resolution. But I'm going to skip over the first couple of pages, which we covered 2 weeks ago. If you can turn to page 4. This is a resolution to issue $20 million out of the $150 million bond issue, and you may recall we discussed amortizing that over 3 years, and that's what the dark orange bars represent. There was a question as to what would happen if you wanted to issue the bonds earlier, and so in the following pages there are 2 alternatives, and it's up to you how you want to handle this. One is on page 5 to issue it over 4 years, and you can see that years 3 and 4 drop down in terms of the projected tax rate. That way you'll be able to, if you want to issue the rest of the bonds sooner, you'll be able to without them. And then on page 6, a third alternative where it is amortized over 5 years. So the plus side of the longer terms is you would be able to issue the bonds sooner, and it would cost you less interest because you wouldn't have to capitalize it or carry it. The downside is that because we're going to be pushing some of the bonds out farther because of this fact that we're not amortizing it as quickly as possible, it's going to cause the entire bond issue to be a little more expensive. And you can see that in the summary sheet on page 7. Again, this is just for the $20 million, but the various costs of the three alternatives are here. It's actually a little bit better deal to issue it longer term for just that one issue, although remember, it's going to cause the other issues to be pushed back. And then finally, there was some questions 2 weeks ago, or however many weeks ago it was, regarding whether the direct placement was something that was used a lot by school districts. And so I added a page at the end to give a few examples of local districts that have recently used this direct placement method, which is only used when it's more cost effective. It's not our first choice, but only when there's significant savings in terms of not having to have a rating, not having to have disclosure council, etc., etc. So assuming you wanted to go forward tonight, I would appreciate having direction as to whether you want to use the 3-year, the 4-year, or the 5-year, or you want some other alternatives.
I appreciate the information, especially around the information about other school districts that have used it. We always like to look at that sort of information, and my level of confidence is satisfactory with that.
So I wonder if we can hear possibly from facilities again about what the possibilities of expected expenditures would be.
So if I could ask either Rose or Richard, I know one of the concerns was that, or not even a concern, a question, did we have the capacity to take on this money earlier? So I don't know which, or additional money earlier.
So beyond the 20, would we want to have additional money come in before 3 years?
Yes, and I know Rose has spoken to us about how we do have other funds available. So I guess we're looking for what your recommendation would be.
Right. And this satisfies what facilities has, and Richard is here. I don't want to speak too much for Richard, but we have looked at his projects for the next 2 years, or facilities projects, I should say, taking into consideration that we're on a roofing project now. Every year we're trying to do at least 5 to 7 roofs along with painting. And then now that we have the facility master plan pretty much done, also taking into consideration how much we can take on. So we felt that this was suitable and it was manageable for us given our staffing. Even if we were at full staff, we probably could not do beyond this. And you've already seen tonight, and thank you for approving the project management fund, because we do require outside assistance. If we wait to be fully staffed before we take on projects, we're going to incur costs and escalation costs because of the price of taking on construction does increase. So even having said that, though, we don't have the capacity to take on more than this. So we have this amount of money, which is fine. We still have the Measure C that we're closing out, which we have about 40 there, and then we have the COP that we haven't drawn as well. So, but we have the plans to do that. And so, getting back to your original questions, yes, this is totally suitable, this is doable, and we're not withdrawing too early either, because the last thing we want is for money just to be sitting there and not being used. So this is fine, and then with the plan, then I kind of talked to Dale about possibly in about 2 years, again, issuing another set of the series, another Series B, and then we can also tap into Measure A, because we had also talked about possibly, again, taking out another COP should we need to do that. So we do have some options, and so this is not going to be cutting it too tight for us, or it's not going to be restricting us.
For the benefit of the public, can you define COP?
Oh, certificates of participation, and that was the restructuring of Measure A that you all approved last year. Yeah, it's all running together. So where we're taking those collections, those tax proceeds to pay for the debt service for the COP. So the general fund does not pay that debt back. It's coming from those collections from Measure A. So the way Measure A was working before is if those tax proceeds were coming in, we were using that for facilities, but it generates about $6.5 million a year. A part of that is still retiring some old debt that we had. So the idea was, why don't we use those proceeds instead to get more for our money by issuing a COP larger amount, which is $20 million. And it will stay exactly the same in terms of our debt and not burdening the general fund with the COP debt, because typically school districts use general fund to repay a COP, certificate of participation. So I hope I didn't confuse that. That was long.
Rose, you mentioned that you don't want to take out too much to have it sitting there. Could you share the downside to taking out too much, and is there a timeline issue or a penalty?
Not necessarily a penalty, and this is where I'm going to rely on Chick and Dale to speak to probably if we draw down too much, it will increase our tax rate that we pass on to our voters, correct? It's based on the amount.
We're paying interest on it.
Yes, we are.
So right, if we're just like 3-year plan versus 4-year plan, we'd pay a little bit more interest, but it would give us a little bit of flexibility, it sounds like, to go for more money in 2 years versus 3. So the question is, would we have a need within 2 years? Or is 3 okay?
Yeah, 3 is suitable. We've done our cash flow analysis. We've already done our projects and laid them all out for the next 3 years. So this is very doable for the district.
So when you talk about the groups of roofing and painting,
yes,
that's a 3-year plan, each
yes.
year for 3 years?
Yes, we've taken that into consideration. Yeah, we were more concerned with drawing down way too much and not having a need for it immediately. That was our concern when I was having my conversations with Dale, because I was taking into consideration this COP and also taking into consideration the old Measure C money that we still have out there that we're still trying to spend down. And but I just thought that they might be able to speak to what happens when you draw down way too much, or you issue a larger issuance and you really do need, and what impact does that have?
Sure, not to belabor it. My name is Chick Adams. I'm an attorney with Jones Hall in San Francisco. We're the district's bond counsel. There's a tax requirement, federal tax law, that you have to comply with because these bonds are tax exempt. That you're supposed to expect to spend the money within 3 years. So when you're putting a bond issue together or a COP issue together, you should always at the time expect that you're going to fully spend the proceeds within 3 years.
So if I may, just for clarification, this would run, if we do the 3-year option, it would run until 2022, but you would come to the board in 2021 approximately to look at the new funding mechanism, because in order to get the projects to DSA in time to match the sale, we need to plan ahead a little bit, or do I have this backwards?
No, you're right. Let's, if you can turn to page 4. I know this gets a little complicated, but you see the final year of the debt service, the darker green. In that year, then we would be selling the next series of bonds, because that payment doesn't start until the year after.
So we would sell them in 2022 and the payment would start in 2023?
Yes.
And then we would do the projects would be submitted to DSA for approval in 2022 then, approximately.
Rose?
Yep, yes.
Because it usually takes 6 months or so,
That's
or
correct.
9 months to get them
Yes.
through. I'm just planning ahead. I know where to put my hammer.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Okay, I guess we're looking for action, motion.
And also the board's pleasure as to the alternative.
Right. That should be part of the motion.
Someone make a stab at this. Brian, are you going to do it? Go for it.
Madam President, I move that the board approve authorizing issuance and sale of its general obligation bonds not to exceed $20 million with the 3-year option and the direct placement funding mechanism.
Second.
We have a first and a second. If no other comments or questions, we'll move to the vote. And that passes 5-0-0-0. Thank you very much.
Thank you for providing some alternatives for us as well for comparison.
Thanks for your patience.
Okay, now we are on 17.3, comprehensive school safety plans. I guess we had this last time and they're back for action. So there's no question, we'll entertain a motion.
Madam President, I move that the board approve item 17.3, comprehensive school safety plans.
I'll second that and say they were actually very well written. I read them all, as usual.
Okay, we have a first and a second. If there's no further comments, we'll go to the vote.
And I appreciate our administrators being here.
And that passes 5-0-0-0. Great, good job, thank you. (17.4) Adoption of American Sign Language 1, 2, and 3 textbooks. Again, we saw this for information last time. It's back for action.
I would make a motion that we approve the adoption of American Sign Language 1, 2, and 3 textbooks.
Second.
We have a first and a second. And we'll go to the vote. And that passes 5-0-0-0. Thank you. (17.5) Award of bid number 1824, painting summer 2019 package 1 at El Monte Elementary School and Mount Diablo High School.
Madam President, I move that we approve item 17.5, award of bid number 1824 for painting summer 2019 package 1 at El Monte Elementary School and Mount Diablo High School.
Second that.
Okay, we have a first and a second. We'll go to the vote. And that passes 5-0-0-0. Thank you. They'll start to look the same.
Yeah.
Award of 17.6 award of bid number 1825, painting summer 2019 package 2 at Hidden Valley Elementary School, Westwood Elementary School, and Oak Grove Middle School with alternate 1.
Madam President, I move that the board approve item 17.6.
Second.
Okay, we'll go to vote. And that passes 5-0-0-0. Thank you.
Looking forward to seeing on campuses in the
Now,
fall.
painting. 17.7 award of bid number 1829, Prop 39 Energy Management System to MCOR Services, Mesa Energy Systems Incorporated.
Madam President, I move that the board approve item 17.7.
Second.
We have a first and
Just a
second.
shortcut.
We'll go to
She's
the
reading
vote.
the whole thing right beforehand.
I'm pleased to see this particular item. I think it will really benefit our district.
And that passes 5-0-0-0. Thank you. Uh, 17.8 award of bid 1830 restroom renovations at Westwood Elementary School summer 2019 to Hung Construction Builder Incorporated.
You can just go so moved.
Second.
Okay, we got a first and a second. We'll go to the vote. Robert's slapping your hand right now. And that passes 5-0-0-0. Thank you. .9 award of bid number 1831 restroom renovations at Strandwood Elementary School summer 2019 to Hung Construction Builder Incorporated.
Madam President, I move that the board approve item 17.9.
Second. We have a first and a second. I'll go to vote. And that passes 5-0-0-0. Thank you. $17.10, award of bid number 1833, painting summer 2019, package 3 at Riverview Middle School and Sequoia Middle School to Athens Painting and Commercial Coatings Incorporated.
Madam President. Madam President, I propose
17.10.
17.10, the award of bid 1833.
Second.
Okay, we have first and a second. We'll go to the vote. And that passes 5-0-0-0. Excuse me. Okay, I think we are at 1711, awarded bid number 1834, warehouse infrastructure upgrade to Bachman Woody Electric Company Incorporated.
I make a motion we approve the award of bid number 1834, warehouse infrastructure upgrade to Bachman Woody Electric Company, Inc.
Second.
We have a first and a second.
I did have a question.
Okay.
Do we currently have an emergency generator out at Bissell Lane, or, because I noticed in here it said that we would have a future emergency generator?
A very small one at this time.
So you're gonna upgrade it? Okay, because we have one here at Dent too.
Okay, we're ready for vote. And that passes 5-0-0-0. Thank you. $17.12, award of bid number 1836, bus garage restroom upgrade to Savala Construction.
Madam President, I move the board approve item 17.12.
Second that. So I had asked the question why the men's restroom was being upgraded when I'm presuming we also have females in the job positions that would use this. The women's restroom was upgraded recently, a couple of years ago. And so I appreciate the response because we need to take care of all of our employees.
Gender equity. Okay, we're ready to vote. And that passes 5-0-0-0. Thank you. Okay, we are on 17.13, resolution of intention to transition its election method and proposed timeline. So we're going to ask Mr. Schenke to provide some information. We also do have a speaker card on it.
Okay.
What would you like to do first? You want to talk about
This item is the first reading of a resolution that is being proposed in response to a request by the Bay Area Voting Rights Initiative for the district to go from at-large election of trustees to district area election of trustees. The receipt of the request triggers a statutory provision that forestalls costly litigation if the board goes in that direction. And basically it'll set a fairly short timeline, which will be brought to the next board meeting after we flesh it out. But it basically consists of a process of 4 public hearings, 2 public hearings before maps are proposed, and 2 public hearings afterwards. And the district would also have to retain the services of a demographer to make sure that the trustee areas that are created are relatively equal in population and also reflect possible majority-minority district or not, and relate to race and protected characteristic classes, which are race, color, and language groups primarily. This is the first reading. It would be coming back on May 13th if the board consents to that for final adoption to begin the process. It's a long, involved process, and it relates to a lot of, we'll be doing a very large community outreach to make sure that we have input on this. But ultimately, it will be this board's decision to do that, and if the board decides to go forward with it, then it would be referred to the County Committee on School District Reorganization and ultimately to the State Board of Education also. The target would be the next board election in November 2020. Any questions that we certainly make an effort to answer?
Maybe we want to have, we'll do our public comment on it, so Mr. Rafferty, Scott Rafferty.
Good evening. I think this is a real opportunity for the district. It is one of the largest districts in California. It is at large. And that creates a formidable obstacle for minority candidates and for candidates in general to be able to compete in such a large district. And it also has resulted in a situation over the years, for the last several cycles, the largest city in the district has been unrepresented, and that's a city with a substantial minority presence. A number of people have pressed me to do this for quite some time, and I've indicated that it's something that the district could do on its own. But since we're at this juncture, I'm going to try to advocate for minorities. Some of them don't like to come to meetings because in another district this was pretty uncomfortable. But I think it's relatively straightforward. I don't think it's going to be difficult. I'd be very surprised if your demographer finds a minority district, because I'm usually pretty good at that, and I've looked. And the California Voting Rights Act is sort of a kinder, gentler way of accomplishing this. We're all minorities in California, and that's why the traditional threshold of 50% of one minority group is not usually reached in Northern California. It's rather surprising, actually, that the other two districts that have changed both had majority and minority districts. So I think it's a more relaxed standard, and you're going to be able to listen to the community and have more or less of a blank slate. And I don't believe that there's some concentration, I know, but I think it can be managed in a way that's fair to both you as incumbents and to challengers. It's something that I think will create throughout the county opportunities for people to enter public service. And that's important because people go on from school boards to serving in the legislature sometimes. At least that's been the tradition in our county, and it's a tradition we need to renew. So I know it's not the most popular thing with incumbents. It's not going to be that difficult of a process, and I'll do everything I can to support it. So whatever demographer you use, I'm going to try to make sure it's not very costly. You're not having big population shifts. You may not have to do any adjustment in 2020, but if you do, it's not going to be a full trip board. It's something that should be done very economically. So thank you very much, and I'm here to listen.
Sir, if you might, you want to identify yourself.
Oh, I'm Scott Rafferty. I was identified.
We record these.
Yes, so I hope you can post the petition.
Yeah.
I did.
It's public record now. We do have it available if anybody wants.
Great, thank you. And there's been a lot. I did very extensive research. I didn't want to identify the incumbents and so on, because it's not a bad thing to have racially polarized voting, but it's there. So thank you very much.
Well, before you leave,
oh, sure.
I noticed that most of your letter referenced the Bay Point community, where I was born and raised.
Yes.
And the only time I remember someone going before the county board to redistrict this, it was kind of a cranky old guy who'd never been to our schools or had any kids go to the schools, and was just kind of doing it for the sake of doing it. I just didn't find your depiction of my community not getting fair treatment under the Measure C to be accurate. I didn't see your voting perspective of my community be accurate. And I'll just be honest with you, I don't mean to offend you. I went to a training through CSBA on this, and it seems like it's really just a convenient way for attorneys to get money. We'll do it because it's the thing to do. It's a civil rights movement, it's a law, and we'll move forward. And I just want the community to know I don't really think that we've not represented all of our people. I think we've done it, we do it well, and this is really just the new wave that all boards are being asked to do. But I just, like I said, I did not find your information to be reflective of what I know to have happened in that community for, well, the 64 years that I've lived there. So thank you.
And I would just like to say I appreciate your bringing this forward at this point in time. Our board has discussed it previously. The primary reason that Concord currently doesn't have an individual on the board is all of us have encouraged individuals to run and candidates haven't stepped forward. The other thing I want to share that although it is frequently said that Mount Diablo doesn't have a minority board member with ethnicity, I happen to be registered with a Native American tribe, and the Mount Diablo School District has benefited from the registration of my 3 children as Native American, which provides additional income to this district and the Martinez American Indian Education Program. So we have been, albeit not 50% or not 90% or 99 or 100%, as Ms. Cound has pointed out, have been somewhat represented by minorities on our board. It's just that I don't promote it a lot because it's we're here to serve all children, and we do. This board has been has been proactive in working with our minority populations and trying to create welcoming schools and be welcoming to all parents and citizens in our district. And I hope that you can appreciate that, and we have shown it to our communities.
I do appreciate that, and I was aware, I understood, I believed you were Native American. Of course, that's not the only minority. It's not the primary.
It's not the primary one in this district, no. But at one point in time, it was all of California.
I very much respect that. I hope someday I find a majority American Indian, Native American district, but it's not going to be in the Bay Area. But I do respect your background and what you bring to the board. And but I think this will be a good thing for your constituents, and it's it's really not so much about money, because the other guy, other people that do this don't write 20-page letters and don't really research it, and I'll be interested in discussing with you.
Your flawed research? Yeah, we could do that sometime.
That would be good. Well, thank you very much.
So the question.
Oh, I'm sorry.
The Bay Area Voting Rights Initiative is a group of people that you represent.
Yes, it is.
Does that include parents who are aware of the budget cuts that we're currently in the midst of at a time where we really want to make sure that our teachers and employees...
It does, and that's one of the reasons I was so disappointed that the board did not do this on its own initiative. As I suggested to you several months ago, that would have saved $30,000 right off the top.
Now is the time to do it as opposed to waiting
Now
for
is
the census
absolutely
when we
the
have
time
the
to do
actual
it.
data.
The legislature has made that very clear. The legislature's passed a bill because I extended Brentwood, which was a good decision. The legislature didn't like that. They want this done. And you're one of the largest districts in the state. It's overdue. You should have done it yourself. It should have been done before.
Certainly something that we're moving forward with, as you can see. It will be done. It will be done in the midst of our superintendent search and our search for funds for all of our teachers and employees.
Well, it will make for a strong, capable board. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
Anyway, this will be coming back for the next board meeting for the adoption resolution.
Okay, great. Thank you, Mr. Shank.
The next item does need to be acted on tonight.
Okay.
I did, which is I've advocated for something along these lines for 3+ years. I do think there are many merits to it. I'm going to defer to my esteemed colleague, Mrs. Mason, on the flaws in this particular research, but setting that aside, I do think in such a large district with in many ways homogeneous board, even though there are aspects of diversity, a largely homogeneous board, that I think this is something that is more democratic and would allow for trustees to have a more active role within their particular area, and there are trade-offs there, but I think there are many benefits to this, so I'm looking forward to the process.
Yep. Okay. Thank you, Larry. So we'll go to 17.14, authorize solicitation for demographer to assist in possible establishment of trustee areas for board elections. So, do you want to speak to this, Mr. Shafi?
I would make a motion that we authorize our legal counsel to seek out a demographer to assist us in this possible establishment of trustee areas for the board.
With the superintendent's approval.
With the superintendent's approval. Of course.
It's just kind of a given for all.
I'm a lawyer. I do these little detailed things.
Do we have a second?
Yes, I already
Second. Okay, so we have first and a second, if there's no further comments. Let's vote.
Okay, I'm sorry. Who made the motion, please? Thank you.
And that passes 5-0-0-0. Thank you very much. I think we are, can I just ask a clarifying question? So we're going to rewrite this, amend the letter, and then we want signatures, so we can just figure out how to work with everybody. I mean, I think it's a good idea. I would like to see it.
Signatures are an Angela, and I will happily provide you with an electronic signature if you'd like it.
Oh. Yeah, we'll figure that out. Okay.
Just our names is enough, I would think.
Yeah. Just signatures. Okay.
I did have one question. I recall that, we had a comment in, over at Monte Gardens about, Ms. County brought it up, I'm sorry, in her report about suicide prevention, etc. I recall that on the back of the photo ID cards for high school students and maybe middle school students, information is supposed to be printed on there. Was that effective last year, or is it effective this fall, and have we implemented that?
It's effective in the coming year, and we are currently working to communicate this, so it's really well known at the schools. So we've been speaking to the principals about this, but the new legislation states that we do need to put that information about suicide prevention on those cards.
I think there were several hotlines or something, or maybe
Yes.
at least that one.
It's a real positive thing.
Right.
So we want to make sure everyone understands it before we do it.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks for asking.
Okay, we are adjourned. Thank you.